Hey everybody, George here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another episode of the Win Insider Series where I get to talk to different people who play different roles in our industry, get to know them a little bit better. Some of them I know, and some of them I'm just getting to know, like Deborah Parker Wong, our guest today. Hey Deborah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, George. What a great opportunity to catch up.
So for those of you that don't know, I'm sure there's not many of you out there, but Deborah's a journalist, an educator, a well-known speaker, a student. You do a lot, Deborah. You know what's funny? I'm going to jump into this because I think it's great. I was looking at, I went on your LinkedIn page to kind of say, okay, doing my little bit of research, and this is what you're up to right now. These are all the things you're currently still doing, right? So you're an instructor for wine studies at San Jose State. You are the national editor for Slow Wine, the approved program provider for the WSET program, an adjunct professor at Santa Rosa JC, global wine editor at the Somm Journal, global wine editor for the Tasting Panel magazine.
Actually, I'm just contributing editor.
Contributor, okay.
Misleading, but I want to be accurate.
Adjunct wine instructor at Cabrillo College, professional wine and spirit judge at multiple competitions. And you just got your master's in enology and viticulture. Like, I'm busy and I'm purposely, I just got my hands in a lot of different things, but I can't compete with that. That's crazy.
You're too kind. It does sound like a bit of a rat race. In fact, I had to create an infographic to give people an at a glance look at my multiple professional activities.
I know, it's like, how do you respond? It's like a 15-minute conversation.
I know, so I just put up the infographic.
What do you do?
It's good.
It's amazing. Well, I'm really happy that you're here with us today. This is very cool, and I'm happy to have our audience get to know you a little bit better as well. So thank you for being with us. I'm going to start off with just talking, and I love to do this with everybody because I'm always super curious about people's journey from where they began to what they do now. So I'm going to start with that. Like, how did you talk a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up, and then how you wound up all the way leading to what you do today? I'd love to hear that story.
Okay, well, let me keep it brief. I'll give you the abbreviated version. But as a kid, I think I wasn't your average kid. I absolutely loved public television, and I started watching Julia Child. She was on the air when I was a young child in elementary school, and I just fell in love with that television show and the idea of cooking and the idea of French cooking. And of course, Julia always raised a glass at the end of every segment. And so Julia Child introduced me to wine and she never made me feel uncomfortable about it at all. So at any rate, I loved, I grew up with a real passion for cooking and for food. And I read Gourmet magazine from cover to cover. And, I lived in Pennsylvania. We lived right on Lake Erie, on the New York state line. And our home was surrounded by vineyards. It was surrounded by Concord grape vineyards because they were used at Welch's for juice and jams and still are to this day. When I was in elementary school, I could hardly wait for harvest. I would watch the clock. I would watch that second hand when it was 3 o'clock. So I could run home during harvest and pick grapes. And that's an indelible memory from my childhood, is this, I was earning 35 cents a lug. So it's really a big deal. But these early childhood experiences, I think, were very instrumental in bringing me to where I am today and being so content and self-actualized, or trying to be self-actualized with where I am today. I've had multiple careers. I worked in the fashion industry for many years. I went to FIDM and worked in the fashion industry. I worked in high tech for a number of years during the boom because high tech needed good PR people. And I had some training. I had worked out of college. I had worked at a boutique PR firm that had celebrity chef clients in Michelin-starred restaurants, and I got to further indulge my love of food. It was there that I met some very impressionable people, professionals.
Right.
Tim Gazer, for one, Evan Goldstein, who are now colleagues of 20 years. I met them working side by side with them at these restaurant accounts. And, George, I looked at the back of the house and I looked at the front of the house
Yeah.
and I looked at these guys, with their big book and everything they knew about it. And I was like, okay, I think this could be for me. So I started studying. And this was in the early 90s. I started studying and I kept my hand in while I worked in high tech and had my own PR firm, whatever. Um, and when it came time, push came to shove, and I really needed to make some choices about, work-life balance, my family. I said, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to take on wine. And I very consciously chose to work in wine. I would consider it my third career.
I mean, that's a pretty big jump coming out of technology. I mean, there's no secret, the wine industry isn't like the highest paying industry in the world, right? So you're jumping out of tech and into wine. So obviously, and we work very hard on the wine side. So that's a pretty big lifestyle change, making a decision like
Well,
that.
I kind of already had a taste of it. I worked in 91, I worked for a boutique PR firm for Michelin starred restaurants and celebrity chefs. So I already kind of had a feel for the industry. And I just took a little hiatus and ran a high-tech PR firm, co-directed a high-tech PR firm for a number of years. And those jobs have kind of fallen off the wayside of my CV these days because
Yeah.
I'm 20 years in now to the
Yeah.
wine industry. So, I do think about those transitions, but I had to make some tough choices, and I decided that I needed to learn more. So I started studying for the WCT diploma. When I made the transition, I started writing.
Yeah.
I wrote for the Patterson's Beverage Journal,
Oh yeah.
which is now the Tasting Panel magazine.
I love that. One of your quotes, to learn, read, to know, write, to master, teach. And it's like, that's kind of what you've done,
Yeah,
basically what you've
it's
done.
been my guiding light. That's called teabag wisdom. It came off that quote. It's a Hindu proverb.
Oh, is it?
Came
Okay.
off a teabag, a little teabag hanger. It did indeed, but it has been my motto and my guiding light. And I know it's kind of corny, but I really have adhered to that.
Yeah, but I mean, it's simple, but it's smart, and I think those are the kind of quotes that just those little things like that. I'm like surrounded by little quotes like that because it just kind of keeps my head right, keeps things sort of just simplifies things a little bit. So I'm all about having little
So, do
things
you
like
have quotes on your wall, George?
I do.
I do too. I have one right in front of me. It says, "A goal is a dream with a deadline."
I wrote that down actually. I wrote that down on my sheet here because I thought that was another one that was really good because I'm I guess like kind of a dream chaser, right? So I'm always got different ideas of things that I think I can do or want to do, and like a lot of people. But there's a huge difference between like people who have ideas and then people who sort of achieve those goals. And I think setting deadlines is that's a big part of it.
Well, learn journalists. We basically live and die by our deadlines. If you don't have some respect for a deadline, you won't be a journalist for very
Yeah,
long.
yeah. That's a good segue to a question I wanted to ask you. How would you describe your editorial approach? So what motivates you or what inspires you like on a particular story? What drives that?
I think I think that's a really very good question because I think you'll be surprised by my answer. I'm not the kind of person that wakes up in the morning and feels the urge to write. I am the kind of person that wakes up in the morning with questions that I'm looking for answers for.
Hmm.
And I find the answers in a number of different ways. I've been reading research papers, talking to people, getting out in the field, looking under rocks. When I find some answers or I find some interesting things that may lead to answers, I'm motivated to share what I've learned with my audience. And I feel really fortunate to have outlets where and I can do that.
Yeah.
I can. And so for me, writing, it's the icing on the cake, George. It's the bow on top of the present. It's the end of my process. And that is probably, a bit backwards.
Yeah. That's interesting. I wanted to also ask you a little bit about the what's the way I want to phrase it? So you're an educator, right? So you're teaching people all the time, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. But you also just got your master's degree, right? Which I mentioned. So that must
Well,
be
George, May 17th will be the day I live in infamy. Actually, I will be walking. I will be hooded. I will be acknowledged in front of my peers and my department. So that's the day that I will do the Snoopy dance.
well, congratulations in advance on that. But did you find was it interesting for you? Because most of the recent history, you're educating, you're teaching, you're instructing.
Yes,
Now
yes.
you're a student. Was that did you enjoy that?
Oh, absolutely. It's the journey. People say, well, what are you going to do now? I'm like, I've already done it. It's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
There were a couple of motivating factors is this there that motivated me to do this. And I did start the degree during COVID.
Okay.
It seemed like a good time to take on that dream because it has been a dream of mine since my children have gotten their degrees, and so now it's my turn. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think being an educator, and my titles are really interesting. I'm a lecturer. Technically, lecturer is my title at San Jose State.
Okay.
I'm a wine studies instructor at the junior colleges. So that we say professor, but not so. I am not technically a professor, but um, I always wanted to have a master's degree, and I realized I've been writing a sensory column for 5 years, a column about olfaction, gustation, perception, everything related to wine,
Yeah.
and everything not related to wine in some cases. So I said, all right, instead of just writing about this stuff, why don't I become an actual sensory scientist? Why don't I actually do the work, get in the
Yeah.
lab, run some sensory studies, write a peer-reviewed paper,
Yeah.
publish peer-reviewed science, and also in the meantime, um, give myself a raise at all the schools I teach at, because in academic teaching, you are compensated based on your education
Oh, okay.
level. So no one's going to give me a raise except me.
Right,
So the
right.
master's degree got resulted in a raise at 3 different colleges.
How did you find the time, to do that on top of everything else that you were doing? Do you just, I mean, obviously you just made it happen, but you couldn't have had much free time.
Or much of a life.
Yeah.
During COVID, we were kind of on lockdown. So the first 2 years I did on lockdown. And
Okay.
I feel in some ways I have some guilt about it, but COVID didn't really affect me professionally in the way I know it affected so many other people.
Right.
So I don't have this trauma like the PTSD of COVID. I have this, dream. COVID became my dream machine. It
Yeah.
became my opportunity. I'm a multitasker, and I would say that if you are going to be a person with multiple professional activities that are demanding, public facing activities, journalism you can write in your bathrobe, but it's still
Right.
out there. Um, you need to be able to multitask. You need to know who you are as a person, and if it's going to work for you. Because people ask me, I said, I couldn't really, I don't really fit into any of the pigeonholes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great winemakers. I'm not really interested in being a winemaker. I want to write about them and talk to them and drink their wine.
Yeah.
I just don't really find a pigeonhole job in the industry, and so I decided to kind of create my own.
Yeah. I just think it's so admirable. My mom, when after I have a younger brother, younger sister, and my brother's 7 years younger than me. And your story reminded me of that, of my mom. So my mom was a nurse anesthetist who always felt like she could have been a doctor. And so she also went back to school after my brother graduated from college. She was like, you know what? I'm going to go do this. I've always wanted to do it. And she went back to medical school. So I think it's an inspiring story because I think there's a lot of people who go, oh, you know what? I wish I would have. I've always wanted to get my master's, but I wound up having a family or a career, and they just feel like they can't. They have like these limiting beliefs, right? So I always admire folks when I hear stories like yours that go, yeah, something I've always wanted to do, and I did it. I mean, you've done a lot of other things too, which is pretty cool.
All right. Well, I did find time for the school, and I found time for the research during COVID. I worked in the lab, the beautiful sensory lab at Fresno State, two
Yeah.
years by myself during COVID. Practically, it was bizarre to say the least, but
Yeah.
it got done.
Yeah.
And then I only had to drive to Fresno twice a month because I could get a reprieve from driving weekly. So I drove twice a month to attend classes and to finish my research. And um, I did take some classes at other colleges. I took a class at San Francisco State where I received my bachelor's degree,
Yeah.
and I also took a class at Santa Rosa JC as well
Yeah.
too. So I skipped around and picked up some credits and units for courses that I needed to not have to drive to Fresno. So
Yeah. But still going back to like student mode is pretty cool, right? Because I know even for me, when I have to do something down at Sonoma State, when I'm on campus with all those kids, it's like I feel like this is great, man. I want to go back to school, So there must have been parts of it that were real. I mean, I know you loved it, but I mean, there must have been other parts of it that just was just neat to be around young people who were learning, and I don't know, it's just
well,
something.
I am. I stand in front of them for hours at a
Yeah,
time.
that's true. You're there all. I guess I didn't think about it that
I
way.
get that rush of young
Yeah,
energy, and I'm around Gen Z all the time. I mean, my students at San Jose State are Gen Z 21 to 25, and my goal there is to create wine likers. I've got this new phrase, wine likers, and that's the aim. They gotta like it. It's like we need them to like our product.
talk
For
a
many,
little bit more about that because I think that's really interesting the way that you put that because we definitely need to when you say it like that, it sounds fun, right? It doesn't sound intimidating. It doesn't sound overly technical. Um, it kind of makes me think like you're helping to um, tweak their curiosity, push their curiosity button a little bit, right?
I
Which is what wine is
try.
all about.
I'm trying. Well, I
Yeah,
can tell you, I'm a technical wine writer. I do
yeah,
not write for consumer outlets, and I'm a WCT diploma, and I have taught WCT for years
yeah,
since 2009. I am a really technical educator. I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole point of trade certification, and that audience of people who want to be serious students of wine. So for me, it's like this is like a 180. I've
yeah.
completely overhauled my curriculum, and I've completely changed the way I approach the the curriculum, the things that I want them to learn
Hmm.
about wine. And I've even written a couple columns about it, what I've done. And I've also I'm doing a series of evaluative pilot studies, basically research, every
Yeah.
semester using this Gen Z audience to see how successful my methodology is.
How are you measuring that? What's your criteria?
Well, it's really interesting. One of the things I learned studying for my master's degree was how to take hedonic data and turn it into statistical data. Hedonic data meaning subjective data about preferences and feelings and things like that.
Yeah.
So I'm equipped with the tools to write post training surveys,
Okay.
and I've been training the students on a number of different ways of assessing wine quality and style. There are two or three different ways you can approach that, and then having them do these surveys and then doing analysis on the surveys. And I'm changing the methodology each semester. And
Yeah.
my goal is to write a paper that kind of summarizes three or four of these different mini studies I've been doing. So
It's really interesting. Kind of like I don't know if this is gonna make any sense, but it reminds me, I play a lot of golf, and it reminds me of a way of teaching people to golf. So traditionally, you get on the tee and you got to get your driver out and hit the ball 200 or 300 yards, and then and it's just intimidating. And this way that they do it up in Healdsburg, you basically start from the green out. So it start with just putting, right? Anybody can go out there and putt, and then you move 25 yards out, and you
So
move
it's like a
15.
mini golf approach, right?
Yeah, and then you kind of learn from the green out, and so it's not intimidating. It's just about having fun and understanding the game, or in your case, understanding sort of the basics of wine. But if you want to, but ultimately you can get as technical as you want, right? You can get back all the way, to where you're 500 yards out, and I think that's really smart what you're doing. I mean, it just sounds like
Thank you.
a
Thank you.
fun way of doing it. And I think that having the technical background and understanding and experience, it, makes that part of it easy. So you have that down. You can go there if somebody wants to go there. But I think,
Absolutely.
we
They
need,
do. Some
we
of them
need,
do.
yeah,
No, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it right out. The Gen Z students that I'm working with, they are smart
yeah,
and they are from all disciplines at the college. I mean, these are students that come from all of the disciplines and they are very diverse. It's the most diverse group of students I've ever had. Semester after semester, they are um, I'm so impressed. And I think Gen Z, we don't know enough about Gen Z yet, but what I see, I like what I see and I
yeah,
like what I hear. They're smart, they're thoughtful, they they haven't really traveled. I mean, they haven't really gone anywhere yet, but they are going places.
yeah.
I feel so positive about the cohort that I'm exposed to at San Jose State, which is, of course, a world-class business school. So
Well, I mean, I love that because I love that you have this positive, outlook on where we are and what that generation means, because all we talk about or all we read about is like, how we haven't done a good job connecting with, the younger, the next generation of wine consumers or core wine consumers. And I think that's true, but it's nice to hear that you've got like, hey, you know what? It's not all bad news. But what do you think as an industry we haven't done right that got us into the kind of the situation we're in right now? You must have a perspective on that.
it's a bit of a boondoggle, George.
Yeah.
The wine industry has been suffering kind of from the same problems for a number of years, and of course the industry is cyclical. We
Yeah.
know that. I
Yeah.
mean, I was looking at some of the Wine Market Council data um, the other day, and it was being pointed out, the cyclical nature of our industry
Yeah.
and the drivers that really were behind the growth that we've seen. And what are the new drivers? I think we have to look at I really think we have to look forward. I don't think we can look at the history and learn much. I think,
Yeah.
except what not to do. I think we have to look forward. Did we take advantage of the drivers that led to the growth? I think we did for the most part. I think the industry rode on the coattails of the things that were helping drive growth. And I
Mhm.
think going forward, we might have to take the driver's seat. And when I think about the future of wine, and people are always saying to me, "Oh, you're a geek, you're technical, you're going to turn people off, that drives people away." And I agree. So we changed the channel, right?
Yeah.
And we've got a new way of talking and interacting with young adult consumers about our products. And I just think we need to do more of that. I really do think education might be the key. Education's getting a really bad rap because they're saying, "Oh, you're trying to drown us in facts and minutia. We don't want that."
Yeah.
Um, but they still want to learn. They're curious
I
and they're
agree with you. I think there's a way to spin it. The education, it's not like you need to take a class in order to go buy a bottle of wine. That's not what we mean, right? It's just because it is a fun thing to learn about. And I think education is key. But you said something else that I'm all in on, which is we cannot look backwards. We cannot sit here and twiddle our thumbs, hoping that, despite the fact that I also agree with you that it's a cyclical industry, um, but I don't think you can't sit around thinking things are going to go back to the way they were anytime soon, right? So you've got to be willing to do something different. You've got to be willing to try something that may not work, but then try something else, and that may not work. And so I would say I'm an eternal optimist, but I am definitely like a realist. So it is what it is. We're not going back anytime soon. Uh, I'm not sure exactly what the right thing to do is, but I know for sure what the wrong thing to do is, and that's to keep doing what we've been doing.
Yeah, I think you're a pragmatist, George. I'm also a pragmatist, and I, because I think pragmatism gives us a good cold hard dose of reality, but we still want to be creative, and we still want to, be resourceful and
Yeah.
opportunistic about what we have. For myself, I don't make wine, I don't sell wine, so what can I do? What I'm doing it right now with this
Yeah.
young cohort, these young adult consumers. Um, I feel like it's the only way I can make a difference. Of course, I work on the slow wine guide as well too, and I think that is another way of making a difference, but it's completely less direct. Working with
Mhm.
these students is a very direct, it's really visceral. I'm with them every week for several hours, and at the end of the semester, I can tell you they are intimidated by that wall of wine, that wine wall. They're too intimidated by it. And at the end of the semester, they are not.
Yeah.
They are now feeling more confident, like savvy wine consumers. So I am teaching them how to buy wine. I'm instilling the confidence that they need to make choices based on what they like.
Right.
First thing we need to do is figure out, what do you like?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I figured that out right away.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they do a blind tasting of wines, and they fill out discussion assignments where I ask, rather nosy questions, and they reveal a lot. And so I can completely see where to go. It's like having a mirror. It's almost like seeing a mirror for them. I really can understand them almost immediately.
Yeah.
And I think about the market itself and the surveys that we do with consumers, and all this stuff, and we still can't lock in to a direction. We can't lock into what the levers are going to be, right?
Right.
But then I look at my students and I think I do know what the levers are, and that's the way I organize the curriculum for them.
Well, I think you're in a very cool situation that you're able to be in the same room and have these two-way conversations with these younger people, right? So you're not just, pushing information out, but you're engaging, right? And you're hearing back. And one of the things that I feel like needs to happen is we need to have more of that next generation in the room when we're talking about what should we be doing differently, what should we be doing. I was at a meeting. We're very involved with Wine America. We support all the associations, and I was at a meeting with a number of executive directors talking about what we should be doing. And I'm 59 now, and I was like, I'm not saying I was the youngest person in the room, but I wasn't. I was pretty darn near the youngest guy in the room.
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
wasn't anybody, like, I don't think anybody in the room that were in their 30s or late 20s and 30s. And it's like, it was just like one of those kind of thinking like, not, I don't want to take away from what experience brings to the conversation, but there is something about younger people who ha haven't been stifled or haven't been, I'm not sure what the word is, but there's that youthful thing where you don't know what you don't know. So you try things that you would not try when you're 50 because you don't know. And I feel like we've got to find ways to get those younger people in the room and be part of the conversation. And I am going on here, but I think as we start to see a generational shift in leadership in our industry, then we're going to see some things are going to really change. That's just my feeling.
Well, I think that, Gen X Gen X brought us cocktail culture, right? Gen X is cocktail culture. Millennials were a little bit of everything,
Yeah.
you know, kind of still, I think, a little bit of everything. Um, will Gen Z be like millennials, a little bit of everything?
Yeah,
Um,
perhaps.
Interestingly, when I ask them about what beverage alcohol they enjoy, I get, a pretty predictable response from these students. And then I get some surprises. Um, they they do like spirits, tequila. This is a very diverse ethnic group,
Yeah.
so they do like spirits. It's not cosmopolitans and espresso martinis for this audience. It's a
Right.
different. And they tell me in their discussion assignments what they are consuming, or what they enjoy, what they go to. And then I think about that, and then I think about the wines I'm going to show them.
Yeah.
Um, they are still very much um, focused on wines that have some kind of residual sugar,
Yeah.
which is fine.
I agree.
And the whole no low alcohol thing, they're not as interested in no alcohol as they're um, intrigued by the naturally low alcohol wines that we have. And
Yeah.
it's the world is your oyster, George. There's a million naturally low alcohol wines out there to choose from. And so I really focus on that and the wines that I'm showing them. Um, and what I tell them when we're studying the theory, because of course we study theory, we study the factors of wine growing and wine making and the regional factors and the wine styles and the grapes. But I tell them, the dry wines are going to be there for you.
Yeah.
You're interested in them, they're not going anywhere. And when
Yeah.
I'm teaching them, I'm like, look, we're studying the theory of the production of all wine styles here.
Right.
And these regions, I might be speaking about Bourgogne, right? Teaching them about the Côte d'Or. Say, this area, specializes in the production of dry wine. But
Mhm.
yet, let's go down to the Southern Rhone and go to Baumes de Venise.
Yeah.
And here you have, Muscat. And this area specializes in the production of sweet wine. So like I said, the world is your oyster. I have so much fun. I romp around the whole globe.
Well, I love everything you're telling me, and I feel like our journalists out there, and I know being a wine journalist has really changed a lot over the last 15 years or more. But I also feel like um, the journalists that are out there helping to demystify wine. Now they're not in the classroom, so it's more of a one-way conversation. But I think as an industry, we need to find ways to continue to support those journalists that are out there writing about wine, keeping it fun, helping to you know uh, tear away at some of what makes it intimidating.
Some of the stigma that
Yeah,
surrounds what we do. So it's really a lifestyle. It's really part of lifestyle journalism. And what I see is a boom in travel writing and
yeah,
experiential journalism. So for myself, thinking about, well, now that I'm going to have some more time on my hands, what else might I like to do?
yeah,
Well, I love traveling and I love,
yeah,
of course, field study for wine, but travel writing is suddenly like it's booming. It's one of the biggest, fastest growing areas of journalism, quote unquote.
yeah,
So I'm thinking, it makes sense. Let's just make wine part of the conversation.
yeah,
Let's talk about lifestyle. Let's talk about activities. Let's talk about enjoying life and wine as part of, that experience.
yeah,
So not just focusing solely on wine, but
yeah.
keeping wine in the picture.
I agree with that, and I think including food as part of that conversation as
Oh yeah,
well.
oh
Because I
yeah.
know for me, I've been in the industry for a few years, but I wound up being fortunate enough to work for the Terlato family. And Mr. Terlato, he was all about food and wine, and that's when I started having that real aha moment for me where I was like, oh, when you really are able to taste, the a wine that pairs perfectly. And this is not I mean, you can keep it simple. It doesn't need to be an super white tablecloth type dinner. It could be something very simple. But for me, that was like a real aha moment. As you were speaking about, travel journalism and really immersing yourself into wherever it is that you happen to be, the wine and food can be a part of that, and I think help create that kind of lasting memory experience.
Yeah. So many great travel destinations are wine cultures.
Yeah,
Our destinations directly to a wine culture. I mean, one of my latest things that I would like to do is I would like to go hiking on the Gran Sasso, which is a national park in Abruzzo. And of course, Abruzzo is wine culture, right?
it
All of
is.
Italy
Yeah,
is wine culture. So the goal is, or the kind of vision is, okay, the motivation is to go hike this gorgeous mountain
yeah,
and to enjoy some really good food and wine along the way. and knowing full well that most of what I'm going to do is scratch around for multiple choice.
Yeah. Do you get hit up by a lot of aspiring journalists for advice on how to get from where they are to where they want to go? What's that? How do you respond to those folks? What do you like? What do you tell them? What kind of advice do you have for them?
There's always questions from students and from other colleagues in the industry, from people I meet at competitions and trade shows and whatever. There's always questions,
Yeah,
and there's questions from parents
yeah,
whose children want to become journalists. Um, I have to be candid. I have to say, journalism, I'm basically paid the same price per word or per story for the last 10 years.
yeah,
Um, it's only one of my professional activities. I have not had to rely on journalism as my primary income. And because I'm a multitasker,
yeah,
being an educator, both a trade educator and an academic wine educator is the kind of foundation.
yeah,
But journalism, of course, it's a revenue stream. I derive revenue from writing. And with journalism, I learn on the job.
yeah,
It's because of the way I work and the way I like to learn.
yeah,
Journalism is ideal for me. So I'm learning while I'm working and doing. It's great.
yeah,
But I'm really candid. I tell people, look, you know, they're, the truly brilliant writers will have the few and far between full-time jobs. And
yeah,
so they should. So they
yeah,
should. Your humble trade writer, like myself, just scrounging around out there in the field, gathering up information. We also play a role, but
yeah,
it's not, I would not be happy and I wouldn't be well suited to a
yeah,
job as a full-time journalist. So I just talk about my own experiences, what I'm being paid, what my process is, why it works for me, and and then tell people, well, I think we really need journalists. With what would I do without NPR? I mean, we need journalism, but we need journalism in industries that are not as fun as wine.
yeah,
We need people to cover war stories. We need people to cover politics. We need journalists that want to tackle the serious. Wine, of course, is serious, but I mean the really nuts and bolts aspect of editorial journalism, breaking news.
yep. Uncover the truth, right? I mean, it's just like it's so crazy the way. I mean, on the one hand, it's so fantastic how much information we have access to, but there's no way of telling what is real and what's not real. It's terribly confusing. It's a tough time to grow up, I think, um, as a generation that started off with, no phones, no, to like my kids who never grew up without it. You know what I mean? So it's just a
Well,
different.
mine are a little older. My daughter will be 29 in
Okay.
October. She is not a digital native. She did not have a cell phone until middle school. My
Yep.
son, we held off. He was just 2 years younger. He's considered a digital native,
Yeah.
but he's a gamer. So his most
Okay.
of his you know free time, whatever, is spent gaming. Um, but neither one of them are really addicted to their phones.
Yeah.
I would say that I see boomers more addicted to their phones than my 28 and 25-year-old children.
I'm guilty of that sometimes doing like the death scroll, where I'm just like killing time and like, what am I doing? And I'm,
Well, it's the dopamine. It's called the dopamine doom scrolling. Yeah,
yeah.
there's an app on your phone. If you are an iPhone user, you can limit yourself.
Yeah, I need to. I'm pretty good. I do some little tricks like I use like the dark, the night mode or dark mode. You know what I mean? It just makes it like less attractive to look at. And plus, it's a reminder for me to kind of go, don't stop looking at your
Okay,
phone. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Make it ugly. We won't look at it.
yeah. It just goes. What am I doing? Um, what do you? How do you see the future of wine journalism? I mean, do you think it's going to continue the path we're on? You think things are going to change?
Oh, well, I'm very positive. Wine, wine has been around for many millennia.
Yeah,
more than many.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. I was just lecturing last night about companies like Sartori in Valpolicella that's completely vertically integrated. It's bulletproof. It's a
Yeah.
it's a bulletproof company. I mean, I think the industry itself, of course, will prevail. We're never going to give up wine.
Of
There's too,
course.
it's the fabric of too many cultures. It's delicious. It makes life enjoyable. I think, and in that regard, knowing that it's never going to disappear,
Yeah.
I'm content. But that's a little bit a long-term
Yeah.
vision there. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not going to go away. But what is actually going to happen? George, your guess is as good as mine.
Sometimes I feel like we need a champion, like we need a hero. Like when I was first getting into the wine industry, was in the early 90s. And, if you ask people back then, well, who's like, who really personifies, at least California wine industry, would say like Robert Mondavi.
Well, we teach them. I teach Andrei Chelichev to the winemakers. I teach
Yeah.
Robert Mondavi to the wine likers. But I teach the early history of wine in California. And there's so many names that are still active in the industry today, that go
Yeah.
back to the mid 19th century that are still active today. So I teach, I love teaching that aspect of history to the students, and they are interested, despite what the surveys say. My students are interested in the history
Yeah.
of California wine.
It's a great history. Again, it's like the
Short
folks who are out
lived.
there chasing a dream, but I don't feel like, and I feel like I'm in the know. And I know there's some really, some wonderful people that are out there, but I don't know that I could say like, this is our guy or this is our girl. This is like, I don't feel like we have that. And I
Well,
feel like we could use it.
because communication is different now. The internet has leveled the playing field, just like
Yeah.
it did for bloggers. And when the internet, when wine blogging came on the scene, all the editorial writers grumbled, but it's leveled the playing field. So we don't have those iconic figures because we have so many more figures. We have so many more people talking. I would take, honestly, I would take quantity over quality in this case of one individual. I would take more voices across a broader range of interests and levels of information than a singular voice.
Obviously a better chance of identifying with somebody, right? Versus having one person, right? Have a whole
Exactly.
slew of people.
Exactly. I mean, not everyone could identify with Robert Montavi.
Yeah.
I mean, he was phenomenal,
Yeah.
but I mean, he's not universal. So
Yeah.
the idea that we have more to like.
Yeah. Hey, are you doing much wine judging these days? Competition judging?
Well, now that I have some free time, I am.
Do you like that? Do you like it?
Oh, it's one of my favorite professional activities.
Yeah.
I get a little demoralized at sweepstakes, though.
Why? Because you're not picking winners that everyone else is, or what
Well,
do you mean?
you know, I, I just occasionally wine that I really am keen on will prevail. But no, I do have a competition coming up, which I'm very excited about. I have judged internationally
Yeah.
many, or if not most, of the international wine competitions. But I've been judging the Concours Mondial group of
Okay.
competitions lately. And I'm very excited to say that in June, I'll be going to Ningxia, China, which
Uh-huh.
is on the border of Mongolia. It's quite remote,
Yeah.
to jury a competition there. And I'm very excited about that. It will be really my first exposure other than vacation time in cities like Shenzhen and Chengdu and Hong Kong. It will be my first real professional activity in China.
Well, I've been lucky to be involved with a few competitions and be able to. I haven't judged, but just be able to watch you go through. That you and the folks like you are able to judge. It's mind-boggling to me how you can sit and because people don't understand. It's like it's not just the quantity of wines that you're going through, but it's the pace that you're having to go through them. I mean, it's like quick, right? You're going like flight of 12, another flight of 12, another flight of 12, another flight of 12, and I just don't know how you do it.
Okay, George, it's the Olympic weightlifting of wine tasting. You
Yeah.
train for it. You train for it. And there's different models. The OIV model, you'll only taste 50 wines in the morning in
Hmm.
a day, and you'll spend the rest of the day doing cultural activities. And there are some competitions, well, you will taste 150 plus, but
Yeah.
when you're trained for it, it's more likely that your brain will tire out before your body,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you can lose your focus. It's harder to focus when you're tired, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I'll tell you,
that's when it gets really tricky. Now, yes, acidity can be a bit problematic. Sometimes, your gums will hurt or your teeth will hurt. And we do struggle with tannins when we're tasting a lot of really big wine, but competition directors try to even it out so you're not being bombarded
yeah.
with, too much tannin or too much acid at any one time.
I think one of the things that the general consumer might not realize and be interested in is that even when you're in a room full of professional judges, so it might be people from trade or media or winemakers, that even those folks can't always agree on what's the best wine they're tasting. Now, a lot of times they're going to say, "Yeah, that's flawed," and you kind of get consensus on the flawed wines. But it's just an interesting exercise in I think underscoring a point you made earlier. It's like it's really about what you like, and just because
Oh, no, let me stop you there,
well,
actually.
okay, wait. So I thought you said early on. You said when you took this
Well, I
like
said maybe a wine I'm lobbying for, a wine that I believe to be superior.
right.
I might have said like, and was misintentioned. A wine that I'm advocating for its quality and style, for its technical, my assessment of its technical superiority, right?
Fair enough, but you probably still don't always agree, 100% with somebody who you might respect.
No, no, yeah, we don't have knockdown dragouts. No,
Right.
we refrain from slugging each other. But but I'm I approach competitions. I'm a WSET trained
Yeah.
uh, taster, and I leave my like outside the door. My
Okay.
like stays outside the door. I
Okay.
try to work as objectively as possible, and we could discuss until the cows come home how objective one can be. But I can tell you that when the only time my subjective preference will matter is when I have to choose between two wines that are of equal quality and equal style and they're superior, both two superior wines. Then I choose based on the
I
wine
got you.
that I prefer. But and not all wine judges prefer to work objectively. Some work entirely based on their subjective preferences, and I think that's where we get into trouble. But I can tell you that any well-trained taster can defend their assessment of a wine like a good lawyer, like a good
Yeah.
trial lawyer.
Yeah.
You have to be able to defend your stance on the wine and do it accurately and succinctly. So
Yeah. I think I don't know how you do it. I was really thinking about an experience I had when I worked for my my winery days. I worked for Jim Beam. Jim Beam had a wine division, and they
yes,
just
I
purchased
remember.
half of Allied Domecq, and I was part of the marketing team. And there was a big tasting. I think we were doing Bordeaux blends or something, and so they had all the winemakers from that all the folks that came over from Allied Domecq, and then all the winemakers that were peak wines. It was peak wines at the time, and all the market people. And there were some big heavy hitters in there, on the winemaking side in particular, and it was so intimidating for me, right? Because we all had to. I was there, got to sit in on this forced ranking
Right. But you
of
were
what
not
we
a
did.
trained taster at the time,
No,
right?
I was so intimidated. I was like, oh my God, but
You
I'm
were
just going
thrown
to
to
go
the
through it.
sharks, basically.
It was brutal. But what was interesting, and you can appreciate this, is what they're. I mean, the winemakers obviously, much better trained. But even when it was all said and done, when we kind of unveiled our rankings, it was still all kind of across the board. There wasn't a tremendous consensus. I mean, they're all good wines from from very reputable producers, but Even the winemakers were all over the place on which ones that they like best. It made me feel good because I felt like, okay. Now again, I can't defend my choices the same way that you could, but at least I felt like I was okay with what I liked and I wasn't like just wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Well, your own subjective preferences, you're entitled to those, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what I tell my students. I mean, yes, my students have to learn the systematic approach to tasting and they have to apply it, but there's still, and this is where I have changed the curriculum for those Gen Z students. Yes, they do use the SAT, but their hedonic response is also factored in there.
Yeah.
And that's a tool that I'm using right now that allows me to for them to do that, to look at both their analytical evaluation of the wine based on the training they're getting and their hedonic or their pleasure response to the wine.
Well, I think that's fantastic. So what's next for Deborah Parker Wong? Now went out and got your master's degree. You've got a little free time. I know you're heading over to China, but what else? You got anything else new on the horizon? What's your next big goal?
Oh, well, it's cooking. It's in the crock pot. It's formulating. I'm slow cooking it.
Okay.
I would like to have a little blue sky open in my life to manifest some things that I've been pondering, or I've been eyeing from a distance. I'd like to see kind of what comes forward for myself, and catch up on some other things that I put off, that I would like to, some of the things that I enjoy doing,
Right.
some of my hobbies that I would like to spend a little more time on, and then I'll line something up. I can't really answer that question. I don't really have anything lined up, but the blue sky is right now the short-term goal. It's just to open things up a little.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I love that. And everybody needs that, right? It's about kind of getting that a little bit of balance, I guess. I don't know if that's the right term, but just a little bit of like,
Breathing room.
I love sometimes when I come in and I don't have anything on my calendar, I'm like, wow, this is fantastic. I'm actually going to be able to do something I've been thinking about, that little bit of that creative time.
Yeah, you have a little to-do list going, that things that they just never seem to move up in priority, but they're there.
Yeah.
And I happen to have my calendar open as well too, and I only see one day that basically, it was only one day in the month, and I'm looking the month view that I see that I don't have some type of professional obligation. So there has not much blue sky yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just working on it. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. This is great. It's always fun for me to obviously meet new people that have an impact on our industry and, get your perspective on it. So thank you for joining us, and thanks everybody in our audience for watching another one of our Insider Series episodes, and make sure you like our page and stay tuned for our next one. Thanks, Deborah.
You're welcome. Goodbye.